and welcome to Up at Noon Live at 5 Pacific Time on California, but at other times elsewhere. Up at Noon is our weekly comedy variety show where we break down all the weirdest, most wonderful, stupidest, and best stories of the week that our big brothers over at IGN didn't have the time for because they're making real news and doing real work. I don't know.
Our commenters that we try too hard to be funny. And I think they're incorrect. We actually just desperately try to be a little bit happy in this horrible world. So that's what this show is for, because
that's very true, Max. If you're just joining us, I'm Brian Altano. That's Max Scoville. Yes, this is how we usually are all year round. This is not really different for us. We're all weird and broken in the brain. So things are going great. We have an amazing show today. We have David Hayter is joining us to tell us about Phantom Covert Ops, which is a game he is playing the villain role in, which is an exciting twist for that man's career. One of my favorite voice actors of all time. His catalog goes surprisingly deep past voice acting. Writer, director, producer, worked on some of the most iconic comic book movies ever made.
I want to just kind of take a minute to be like Metal Gear Solid is the game that made me want to get into game stuff. Like that's the one that is the game that made me pursue this career. And at the same time, X-Men 2 is without question like the thing that made me go home and go, yeah, I should revisit X-Men. Like I was an X-Men as a kid,
right?
And it's like it's weird how like a Japanese video game turned me on to a bunch of cool American movies, and then like a X-Men superhero movie got me like really excited about American comics again. It was just, but David Hayter was kind of at the center of both of those things. So like the fact that we got to talk to him is huge. So yeah.
Yeah. So I guess without further ado, let's take a look at our conversation with David Hayter. Get comfy because we got to talk to this man for a little while, and it was a really, really good time. And also stick around to the end of the show because we did a very, very wonderful surprise with David that you will not want to miss. Mm-hmm. So yeah, hang out. We'll be here. Here's David Hayter. Covert Ops is a VR stealth espionage action game starring legendary voice actor David Hayter, and here to tell us more is the man himself, David Hayter. Hi, David. It's good to see you again.
Well, hello. Nice to see you again. Kept you waiting, huh?
This is an actual codec call with the man himself.
That's right. I'm in the middle of a sneaking mission. God damn it!
You are no strangers to tactical espionage and VR missions, and this new one has you playing a character. I want to just hear like straight up. How does this character differ from your previous roles in similar games?
Well, it differs in many, many ways. First of all, to go back a little, from the time I arrived in Hollywood, I only played heroes. It was the only thing I would get cast as. Snake, Captain America, Jedis, what have you. And I was always very proud of that. I was the Guyver. I did all these things. And then after I turned 40, all villains. It's just,
oh man,
it's just purely ageist. So now I'm King Shark on The Flash and Zangetsu and Bloodstained. And for this one, I am General Zhurov, and he, as opposed to Snake, he is a semi-insane former commander of Soviet forces who is determined to bring the Soviet Union back to life and crush the Americans. And he's old and he's crazy, and it was a pretty fun part to play.
Do you think that people naturally get sort of more bitter and jaded as they get older, and that's maybe why you think there's an ageism with assigning villains? I think it's
the opposite. I think that you start getting cast as villains because you're older, and then you get bitter.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a process you go through. No, that's not true. I enjoy playing villains as much as anybody. I just it was just a funny thing when I was like, boy, I'm not getting offered a lot of heroes anymore. I wonder why that is.
So what's your sort of relationship with VR in general? It's been this thing that I think, like, if you remember, like, going back to arcades way back in the day, it was incredibly rudimentary and kind of hokey, and it pops up every couple of years, and they're like, this is going to be the time. And I feel like now it's finally caught its footing, especially with right now with people stuck indoors. It's been even more sort of wonderful to transport yourself somewhere else. How do you feel about the medium in general? Like, what attracts you to it?
Well, first of all, it's very, very cool. And as you say, I think we're at a point right now where games are really figuring out how to make full use of that world in a way that console games cannot. And Covert Ops is a great example of it. It's I always say you go through the game in a tactical stealth kayak, which people are like, what the hell does that mean? Well, it means you get to sit in a chair and you take your handsets and you use them like kayak. You can row, you can go backwards, you can like lay your oar in the water and turn the thing and hide in reeds and all this stuff. And it's a world that's realized in a way that I haven't. Obviously there's amazing console games and things, but this, you're right in it, and it's, you look around and the world is all around you, and it really takes advantage of the movement and the mechanics that are specific to VR in a very satisfying way. And I guess Half-Life Alyx has done that as well. I haven't played that yet, but I've also heard that's also a groundbreaking example of modern VR gaming.
So I've gotten a chance to play Phantom a little bit, and it honestly, the premise of being like you're in a kayak this whole time, it sounds kind of hokey at a glance, but the weird irony is that being in a boat actually cuts down on the seasickness that a lot of people get from VR. That's what
I mean. And still, it takes a little getting used to, but once you get your brain used to, you can row faster, you can row slower, you can, sort of like slide into things. Once you get your brain used to it, it's very smooth and it's so badass. And I don't know if you felt this way, but it feels like a Metal Gear game in the atmosphere of it and the stealth infiltration of it. It's not, the same crazy world and story, but it felt very much like, being Snake but just you're in a kayak and sliding through a flooded Russian base, and I don't know, I just found it gorgeous.
No, I think that's like one of my favorite things about VR is it has a tendency of taking things that you would sort of find kind of mundane in other video games or especially in the real world, but then in VR you pick up an oar and you're like, that feels like picking up an oar. There's something special about that. How did you also the you've got the silenced pistol strapped to your chest, so you reach down, you grab it like that. You've got a line of clips here, and you grab them and put it in, and it's a really awesome gaming mechanic.
Have you managed to shoot yourself in VR yet? Because you're playing the bad guy. I imagine there's some kind of a showdown in there, but
I would imagine, but I only have the beta test, so there were no actors in it yet. It was just, it might have been the same thing you played. You just go through a few levels and you shoot a bunch of, soldiers, NPCs, things like that. But no, I haven't faced myself down yet.
How did you sort of whittle down how your character was sort of be constructed in this game? Like, what were your sort of influences, or like, are there any sort of nefarious old like 80s action villains that you kind of channeled a little bit here? Like, how did you kind of chip away at who you wanted this character to be?
Well, so because he's from the Soviet Union, I do it with Russian accent. I speak like this, and that was how I started my career. So my first Hollywood gig, I guest starred on a show called Major Dad, and I played a Russian. I played the son of a Russian major who was visiting, and they speak, I'm like, yeah, I speak Russian, blah blah blah, and then I got hired to play a Russian on Captain Planet. So I kind of had the accent in my pocket. I saw the images of the character, and he was this sort of like grizzled, insane, white-haired, tough guy. And that's usually where I get it is from how the character looks, what his history is, and then the script made it pretty clear who he was. This was a guy. This was a guy who had been a Soviet general. He'd been defeated by these phantom covert ops back in the day. It's the most crushing thing of his life, and now he's come back to make sure he succeeds where he failed before. But now the Soviet Union has fallen apart, and he's gone pretty much insane. I mean, if there's any comparison, it's sort of like Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now. You're going up a river to face an insane, power mad dude. And then once I was in the booth, I just went nuts. There is no virtual scenery that is not chewed. Game.
That's great.
One of the biggest things in games right now is the remastering and remaking and redesigning of beloved games from the late 90s. If you were given the opportunity to put on the old bandana and be Snake again for a Metal Gear Solid remake, how would you react to that?
I would react enthusiastically. I love Snake. I love doing that character, and I'll do it. As people know, I'll do it at the drop of a hat. So if they wanted to bring me back to remake those games, I'd certainly be thrilled to do so. Well,
I would love that very much. I would very much.
I thought you were going to announce that they were going to do that.
No, that'd be a weird surprise just to swing that on you.
You did pause like you were going to pull a box out and be
well,
like,
David, I have
look under your seat right now. There's a
but yes, I do it again in a second.
Cool. Now, so I want to talk a little bit about your writing history, because everyone knows you as Snake. You've done a lot of incredible voice acting, but I feel like you don't get nearly enough praise for writing the first two X-Men movies, which I would say arguably laid the groundwork for the modern superhero cinema, genre. And it's, honestly, I, not to fanboy out too much, but when I saw X2 in theaters, I was kind of like a lapsed comic book fan. And I came home and I pull out my giant box of X-Men comics, and I've been glued to Western comics ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad, we, particularly on X2, we really said, let's look at the greatest sequels of all time, like, Wrath of Khan or Aliens or Terminator 2, Empire Strikes Back. How do you take the world we've already set up and bring them the same thing, only bigger and better and cooler? And when we did X1, it's really all set up. It was really, Bryan Singer was like, we have to explain to everybody why they have different powers, why they have different names, blah, blah, blah. The whole movie is a very simple story with setup. And when we did X2, I asked Bryan, I was like, do we have to do all that setup again? And he goes, nope, we assume everybody's seen the first movie and we hit the ground running. And as soon as he said that, I went and I wrote the scene of Nightcrawler attacking the White House. And that's one of my favorite things that I ever participate.
Oh God, yeah, that's one of my favorite moments in any of those movies. Honestly,
it's astounding, and the direction of it, the stunt people, the execution of it was just amazing.
So now, obviously, the X-Men still exist. They're part of the whole Fox thing, and hypothetically will eventually be folded into the MCU. How would, if that was something that you were sort of responsible for right now, or at least could chip in some ideas on, how would you go about integrating that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to speculate unless they hire me.
Don't give away ideas for free.
No, yeah,
that's true.
There's no real benefit to my feeling is the same as it was when we made the first movies, which is take your love of what the X-Men are and try to recreate that world for the fans. The character, the actors may change, the world may change, but Wolverine is Wolverine, and Professor X is Professor X, and obviously we would look at different stories, different worlds that they can take on, but I don't know, it'd be sort of exciting to have a clean slate, and also come in with a new movie that, in a world where everybody knows the X-Men, which was not the world that we were working
right.
in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going to design a movie for Marvel unless they
Okay, so more softball question. If you could cast anybody as Wolverine, who would you put in there? Aside from Hugh Jackman, who's arguably done a perfect job.
He's done very, very well for all of us. I don't know. It's interesting. You know, now they're looking at younger Wolverines, and I don't know. I'm sorry. I know that is a softball question. I should have something ready, but I never think of the actors. I always think of the character when I'm writing them. I'm just writing Wolverine, and then whoever steps into it brings their own. Like Hugh brought his own decency and his own humor and his own viciousness to that role. So I really just never think of it from the actor's perspective, because I think it interferes with the creation of a purer character. You know, one of those
screenwriting rules that you're supposed to pay attention to. It's a casting director's job to figure it out.
A lot of people, a lot of screenwriters say, picture Brad Pitt or picture whomever, whatever. But I find that limiting. I just feel like, make the character completely well-rounded in your mind, and then let the actor bring in a completely new element.
I dig that a lot, because there's, you take a character like that and some of the other characters you've written who are decades of source material, they're iconic on their own. And I think that, like, if you just started associating it with an actor who invariably could or could not end up being in that role, it could cloud the whole thing. So yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, and look at James Bond. Bond is always Bond, but each man plays him differently and brings their own spin to it. But as a writer, you want to write pure James Bond, as far as I'm concerned. That should be everybody's creative goal, to make Bond or make Wolverine.
Now, on the subject of the intersection of super spies and superheroes, you worked on a Black Widow movie for a while. Is that right?
I did, yeah. I was attached to write and direct it in 2004.
That was ahead of its time. Now there's a Marvel one that's presumably coming out at some point. Have you gotten a chance to take a look at that at all?
Yeah, I've read the script. It's. I think it's finished. I think they're just waiting to have an audience again.
Yeah, they got to wait for the theaters to open. But
but yeah, it's very cool, and Scarlett Johansson as Natasha, and I'm looking forward to it immensely. At the time, they were excited to get it made. We were looking at like a $30 million movie or something, and then there was one particular weekend where Aeon Flux and Ultraviolet and Blood Rain came out. And then suddenly we were dead. They were like, people won't go to see a female-driven action movie. And I'm like, well, not those female-driven action. Like, they'll go see this one.
How did your version differ from the one that we're presumably going to get whenever movie theaters open back up, as far as you can tell?
How did it differ? Well, I can't tell you anything about the
spoilers, but I mean, like, sort of tonally, I guess.
Mine was more focused on her origin, how she became what she was, and it was different tonally in that. So mine would have been closer in tone to, like, the first X-Men or X2, whereas Marvel has now developed their style of storytelling, and so their movie will be more Marvelized, whereas when I was doing it, we were still finding our way with these movies. I think mine was a little darker, a little more painful, but I think their movie's going to be great, and I can't wait to see it. And I just want to be careful that I don't tip anything that they're going to do, because they would be upset.
Be a good spy.
Exactly.
Now, still
a good spy would bring you the information, but
still on the subject of superhero stuff you've worked on, you wrote the Watchmen movie.
Correct.
The Zack Snyder one. Did you get a chance to check out the HBO series, which was like arguably
I did, yeah.
What did you make of that?
I thought it was beautifully executed. I thought the actors were amazing. I thought, when I first heard about it, I was like, God, I can't even imagine taking on Watchmen without it being that original Alan Moore story. And I was very impressed with how they created a world that felt like Watchmen but was new, and that was a daunting task. I also loved how ballsy they were in terms of race relations, and talking about racism and in a very raw way. So I really admired it from those perspectives. Nice. Is there anything you've been watching or reading or binging that you wanna share? I feel like everyone's cooped up right now, and you're clearly a. Yeah. Well, there's been a few things. I'm almost done with The Boys, which I really like a lot. Carl Urban and my hometown of Toronto, and my daughter and wife and I have been re-binging Avatar: The Last Airbender, the original cartoon series, which, if you haven't seen it, is one of the greatest series of all time, bar none. Not a kid's show, not the best cartoon show. It is one of the best written, best executed series I've ever seen in my entire life. So we're really digging that right now. I've been watching a lot of great movies. I've been watching streaming. I don't know who's streaming it, but somebody's streaming Fight Club in like 4K, and it's just so gorgeous. And the cinematography on that is astounding. So I've been trying to, I've been reading my film school books. I've been trying to better myself as a filmmaker while I'm stuck inside. And I'm very excited about Joe Bob's Last Drive-In marathon coming on Shudder tonight. Yeah, lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, Shudder has been my jam through all of this. I don't know why I've been turning to like bleak, kind of low budget horror movies, but they've helped a lot.
I feel the same way. It's kind of nice. We were talking in the writer's room this morning about watching Contagion, and people were like, "Oh my God, why would you want to watch that?" And it's like, weirdly, it kind of makes you feel better.
Yeah, no, totally. That's actually that has had a tremendous surge recently in popularity, because I think people are just looking for some kind of answers or some kind of escapism, or maybe even look at a situation that's worse than the one we have and kind of go like, "Whew, all right, well."
Well, that's the thing. It's exactly what we're going through, but it's about 4 or 5 times worse. And you see people dealing with it, and you see them get to the other side of it, and it's horrifying and it's real, but at the same time, it's oddly comforting. So, and same with, like you say about the low budget horror movies, I don't know, just make me feel better. I've been watching a lot more of that than Disney Plus.
Oh yeah, no, me too. That's been. I think I defer to stuff like that during times like this more than I do like a kind of sappy cartoon princess movies.
Right.
I want to see people get hatcheted and stuff. Have you ever wanted to write or do voice acting or for a horror video game or movie or anything like that? Like, is that
totally? Yeah, I've had horror projects before. I mean, I directed Wolves. Wolves isn't really a horror movie; it's more of an action with a little bit of horror. I guess I just never had them picked up, but I tend to lean towards. All of my stuff is genre, sci-fi, fantasy, horror. And I've got projects that are more comedic than I've done before, and I've got projects that are more horrific than I've done before. So I mean, I was let's see, I was in a horror movie called The Curse of Buckout Road recently. I was in a horror movie called The Devil's Mile. So my Canadian filmmaker friends, they just ask me if I'll be in a movie, and I say sure. That's my criteria. My criteria for being in a movie is 1, you have to ask me, and 2, there is no 2.
I love it.
In fact, both of those movies were low budget Canadian films, so I paid for myself to fly up and put myself up in a nice hotel room because they couldn't afford to do it. And both those movies cost me a fortune to be in. But I think it's great fun.
Volunteer work. That's right. It's good.
That's right. I volunteer to come in and help out low budget movies.
You're a good guy, David.
Yeah. So David, we can catch you in Phantom Covert Ops, which is out on the Oculus Quest and the Oculus Rift platforms on June 25th of this year.
That's right.
I'm dying to check that out. I imagine it'll be a little weird for you come face to face with yourself in VR, but we all have to deal with that sooner or later.
It's not my first time.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been great.
Well, thank you guys. It's really, really great to speak with you, and much love to all of your viewers. And please stay safe, stay healthy, and for the love of God, stay stealthy.
And we're back. It's very good to see you all. Max, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing okay. Just trying to, practice safe social distancing and wear my PPE accordingly. Just the good old face mask it's a good start, but you should go a little bit further.
That's right. So our good friends over at Hasbro helped us go a little bit further with these incredible 1-to-1 scale replica Boba Fett masks that I think I look pretty damn good in. I think this really works out for us, man. I think this is doing really great.
So it's date night after this, and I might not even take this off. I think I look pretty good.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, at this point, who cares, right? What is date night in 2020? You just walk upstairs and sit on the couch.
I mean, yeah, that was really the plan. That was about all we had going on. But yeah. So these are the Black Series Boba Fett helmets that they just put out. They've been doing a series of sort of more collector grade, costume apparel. I guess it would be, if it was for kids, it would be called like role play toys, but because it's collector oriented, they're like, it's a replica of a real helmet. But it's like it's for playing dress up. What's fun though is that they have some light features, which is they got a functioning rangefinder.
Look at that.
And it even slides open, and there's like a little HUD there, which also lights up.
Yeah, so these are $120. They are hard plastic, although from a distance they look like metal. They're quite heavy, so I think I don't know how long you could wear one for. Maybe at a convention or something like that. Back when we had those.
I was looking at this. Like they're clearly like, there's the whole like kind of cosplay scene for Star Wars. There's the Mandalorian mercs, which is people make their own Mandalorian armor and they get dressed up and everything. And I feel like Hasbro definitely checked in with those guys, because what a lot of them do is they'll take those little tiny fans that they put in laptops, and they'll wire them into the helmet to like basically have air conditioning. And if you look at the back, there's like a tiny little spot where you could absolutely put a small fan as a vent.
That's awesome.
Yeah, what I love is like the inside of this is also like decked out. Like,
yeah.
Did you have to like completely open yours up all the way to make it fit?
No. I have no hair, so
I think I just have a large head, even without the hair.
It's got this really easily adjustable sort of system inside here that
like a hard
is
hat,
based. Yeah, and it's based on a set of wheels where you can just essentially spin them and they'll click into place. The build quality on this thing is awesome. I think that like if you look up close, it gets a little bit sort of Photoshop cutout filtery, but from a foot or two away, it looks amazing.
For like a Star Wars replica helmet, you can buy it, frickin' Target. It's pretty good. I actually have the original. So this is one of those toys that I like always wanted as a kid. They used to have like the Star Wars, the Star Wars Insider sort of collector magazine that would have like catalogs for dumb shit like a Wookiee mug, or like, if you want to get Luke's Bespin jacket. And they had the Dawn Post helmets. And they've since made like Dawn Post is a company that used to make I think they used to make like sports helmet replicas. This is the 1997 version, which is like surprisingly good quality. I remember this being, it was like $36 in the Insider catalog. I'll put it on.
Wow.
Screw it. Which was like a lot of money back in 1997. It's actually a little bit roomier, even though it's a smaller helmet, because it has less stuff inside, but it's also like noticeably more claustrophobic. But yeah, like there's like a handful of little bits of like paint on here, but they didn't really do anything too fancy. So the fact that Hasbro's doing like a collector grade, approach. The thing that's special about this, and our good friend Ryan Scott gave me this one's signed by Boba Fett.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Since passed away. So like this is kind of a special thing, even though that it's like kind of bombed out and like
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it, man.
Yeah, look at these like side by side. They're kind of, it's kind of crazy to be like, this is 26 years difference. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean this thing looks awesome, honestly. And I love the old one you have.
It's cool as hell.
Yeah, they've done a couple of these before, and a lot of them have been stuff that I haven't been like super interested in. Like they did like an X-wing fighter pilot, which is cool. But this is like one of the most iconic ones of all time.
Yeah, they did. I think a Stormtrooper one, which I haven't actually tried on. They did a Poe Dameron X-wing helmet, which is like it's okay, but like that's like a very specific helmet. And then the X-wing helmet they sent out, which I was like pretty excited about to be like, I'll wear this at my desk. I don't give a shit. And it was actually like way too small.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I think that what they've done a really good job with this one with making it so that big old adults with huge heads can wear it, which is nice.
Anybody who's got like $120 to spend on a Star Wars hat is going to be like probably an adult or like a very large child, you know?
Yeah, kids only buy V-Bucks and drugs. That was really cool. We also what were we gonna say next?
Let's show this off. They actually a lot of Star Wars stuff is dropping right now because Monday is May the 4th, which sounds like May the Force, which sounds like May the Force be with you. So they always try to do stuff for Star Wars around that. They're actually going to be doing a virtual Star Wars celebration, kind of, where like a bunch of Star Wars people are going to be doing stuff on live stream. That actually just got announced. I don't have the information in front of me, but we do have some.
Yeah, it was New York Comic Con partnered with Reed Pop and a bunch of others to basically they're doing Q&As with voice actors. They're also live streaming the original trilogy with tweet-alongs and stuff like that. But yeah, there's going to be a bunch of new merchandise too.
Yeah,
but yeah, this helmet.
Hasbro just dropped this, which is going to be this is the sort of prototype Boba Fett armor. Honestly, is like if you're going to go to the trouble of like doing all of this paint operations, you might as well just do a blank one, which either you want to do the classics prototype look, or maybe you understand that people are going to be doing heavy customization. So this makes sense.
Yep. I always really liked this, this look. I know you collect the sort of like the straightforward movie quality ones, but I really dig this look. Like it's weird. It's weird to be like a bounty hunter that's wearing all white. I feel like you would stick out too much. But
he was originally going to be like a super stormtrooper kind of, and then they were like, no, let's make him like a weird rustic rambler or whatever. But speaking of bounty hunters, they showed off some new figures from Empire stuff. We're going to get to that in a second. You actually have a bunch to show off with you right now. But some of the ones they just announced, they're going to be doing a 2-pack of Luke and Yoda. Infamous lovers from the hit film The Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people talk about how much love is in that movie, about how like, Han and Leia, they fall in love, but really no one talks about the love between, Luke and Yoda.
Yeah. And Max, maybe I'm crazy. Can you go back real quick? There's the Yoda in the first image I sent you over. The toy looks like he has his eyes closed.
I would guess they have interchangeable heads.
Yeah, that's super cool because I've never really seen them do that for a Yoda toy before.
The doll is haunted.
It's one or the other.
We love looking at JPEGs of Yoda on this show. This one, I guess this is new. I honestly like the Black Series is great. It's good at getting all like the iconic characters. I just don't really care because like I want like dumb aliens. I want like weirdos, and they're mostly like I don't know. We've had enough Lukes already.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm kind of bummed out that we don't have like a straight up Bib Fortuna yet.
This almost feels like a prank. This is going to be an Amazon exclusive. Han Solo and Carbonite, which if you're unfamiliar, is just a brick, and then there's going to be. Let's just like we need to lampoon this further. This is horse apples.
Yeah, and so the thing is with this one is that this was part of a 2-pack. I think it was a Comic-Con exclusive way back, and it came with like Boba Fett.
That was when they launched the Black Series to start with. Like I think that was Comic-Con 2014, and that's one of the most like just double extra giant middle fingers to collectors to be like, hey, guess what? It's an exclusive thing that's Boba Fett that's only at Comic-Con. That's the series,
and you couldn't. Eventually, they spun out the Boba Fett multiple times as something you could buy individually, but I don't think you could ever get this Carbonite Han Solo. So it's a weird toy.
Principle, it's just like a stupid ass accessory, but here it is now. Speaking of bounty hunters, they're also repacking Forlom and Zuckuss, and they're doing something. This is a very stupid. If you're familiar with I guess what you'd call actual Star Wars canon, you're aware that this is Forlom and this is Zuckuss. The logic being the number 4 in the name would suggest that he is a droid, whereas Zuckuss is just an alien. But infamously, on the Empire Strikes Back action figures, they got those swapped, and so Forlom was labeled as Zuckuss, and Zuckuss was labeled as Forlom. So they're doing a little throwback to that, which is good. I don't. That's one of those things where I'm like, I could know an actual fact, like I could know a thing that actually, like I could know. I don't, I could know how physics works or something, but instead I'm like, but then in the 1981 they got the action figures names backwards, and then I read a short story about it in the Tales of the Bounty Hunters.
These are obviously, in celebration of the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back. I'm super bummed out that Star Wars Celebration's not happening this year, because that would have been a good year to throw a big ass party for what is arguably the highest quality Star Wars movie ever made. That said, I will wait for the Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary in 3 years and hope that the world is back to normal by then. But in the meantime, Hasbro sent us over these big boxes of these Black Series 6-inch scale figures. There's a bunch of stuff in here, and I opened up some of them, and I left some of them on the cards so you can take a look. Here is Lando Calrissian. These are all repacks, basically. There's one or two new figures in here, but this is all stuff we've seen before. And a lot of it has been fairly easy to get. I believe this Han Solo was part of a 2-pack that we got with it came with a Minoc for Comic-Con a couple years ago. I don't know if they ever spun this one out on his own. And then there's the AT-AT driver, which I mean, if you like this toy, good on you.
I like that toy. I think that's actually one of the cooler designs of Troopers. The problem is
he's okay.
Much like the TIE fighter pilot, it's unless you have the vehicle, he's sort of he kind of sucks,
Speaking of which, that's just a TIE fighter pilot hanging out.
I had the TIE fighter pilot when I was a kid, and I hated it because the only vehicle I had was a snow speeder, and you got to do some real mental gymnastics in terms of world building to be why is a TIE fighter pilot and Boba Fett hanging out in a snow speeder, and why are they fighting Beast from the X-Men? What's the logic there? And I had the imagination, and it sucked. So I wish that they made. I don't know what I wish. I wish I had a different childhood, I guess. But
there's Yoda, obviously, with his snake. We have long rumored on this show that they are romantically involved. Mm-hmm. I enjoy that. And then I opened up a couple toys. The R2-D2. I've wanted the Black Series R2-D2 for ages. He's been stupidly rare, and they finally made one, but he's filthy. Cool thing about him is if you turn his head, he does a poop.
He gets a boner. Is what it looks like.
His legs come out. On top of that, we've got Princess Leia in her Bespin gear, which is great. They did such a better job in the face sculpts and molds this time around. If you remember,
it's like a 3D. It's not 3D printing. It's printing on a 3D surface, but it's this way they get the face decals applied better, which is good, I guess. But I only like weird aliens, so I don't care if they don't look exactly like they do in the film. Look at. Yeah,
it's weird because I think that Empire Strikes Back is an interesting movie because it doesn't really have a ton of aliens and creatures in it outside of there's a Tauntaun in the beginning, which they made an awesome Black Series figure for a couple years ago that I have. But it's mostly, it's stuff like this. It's Luke in his cool Bespin military fatigues.
I am really fond of the Bespin Luke figure. There was one that came out in 2003, which was part of the Saga collection, and it was one of the coolest toys because it came with a giant suction cup weather vane, so you could stick it to the side of the window and have him hanging off, and his hand came off. And he had I think he had magnets in his. Yeah, I think they had magnets so you could clip the metal lightsaber onto his hand and stuff. But they had this whole thing where there were all these different variants. Where there was one version where you'd rip his arm off and he'd have a bloody stump underneath, which was kind of gnarly for a toy. And they'd have other ones that were not bloody, and then there were some that were magnetized, and there were some that weren't magnetized. So there's this whole weird completist collector circle of I'm looking for a bloody magnet version of Luke. It was a weird time.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
They reprinted this one, which is Luke in the X-Wing costume. This was another one that was really rare for a while. And the cool thing about this is they used more of a rubbery, softer plastic on his stupid underwear belt that goes around his legs. Because it used to be basically impossible to pose this toy because they use a hard plastic there. But one of the cooler things here is this box came with a bunch of backgrounds, which you can use to pose your figures. And I actually did that
Yeah,
for the
I have
purpose
some
of this
photos
show.
here if you want to show them off.
Let's do it.
Oh yeah, so here's everyone knows Forlom and Zuckus. They got to the carbon freezing chamber too late, and also Clayface was there, and they all went solo. Who could forget this deleted scene from the Empire Strikes Back special edition?
That's right. That was George Lucas is at again putting the Hamburglar in the back of his shots.
And then Dak Ralter is killed in the Battle of Hoth, and the AT-AT steps on the speeder and crushes the boy's body. But the Hamburglar is there to give Luke Skywalker thermal charges to blow up the robot walker.
In this scene, we have Luke Skywalker standing on a commemorative Mortal Kombat land cover thing, and this is a titular moment where Luke and Yoda meet for the first time, but their scales are swapped because it's cute.
Originally, there was a large. Yoda was actually 9 feet tall, and he had a serious love affair with Luke Skywalker.
That's true. That's true. Right? Wasn't there? Well,
No,
not
it's not
technically.
true.
No, it's not technically true. But no, there's that weird scene.
No.
Hold on, listen. There's that concept art from Return of the Jedi of that Yoda-like creature in the Ewok village. It's a Ralph McQuarrie painting, and he's this like giant green frog Yoda man.
Oh yeah,
and
there's
he's
that
gigantic.
thing, which then showed up in like the Ewok movies. Is like the Ewoks are all like they're totally cute and lovable, and then occasionally they get together and they get murdered by this like kaiju basically.
Exactly.
I'm torn between just deleting this as hard as I can and also making it my new wallpaper. I'm not sure which to do that. Yeah, there we go. That's good shit right there.
That's a moment that you can recreate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one more toy real quick. This is this sort of like Hoth Trooper. Cool thing about him is he comes with a backpack that you can open up, and inside this backpack you got a vamp for me because it's stuck.
People are really excited about this. I'm not. That sounds like baloney vamping, but honestly, like I've seen a lot of collectors really excited about the Echo-based Trooper. Yeah, that's a nice Lynchian thing.
Yeah, it's a spare face that you can put on this dude, and that's just something you can have going on in your life.
So there's
that's pretty good.
There's a whole like scene of toy collectors who like apparently like, and this is something that blows my mind, but Stormtroopers are like the best-selling Star Wars figures hands down, which I think is like it's the same deal with like games with microtransaction and whales, where like the weird dudes who have attics full of like giant like scale Star Wars battles are the ones who are spending the most money on Star Wars toys. And we're like, make a Bib Fortuna, damn it! I'll buy one of them. Listen to us, and they're like, but no, we'll sell so many clones and so many troopers. So for them to be like, here's an Echo-based trooper with an interchangeable face, and if you really need to have variety in your troops, you can like maybe repaint both of those faces separately. So you buy 4 of them, and you have 4 separate soldiers from basically one mold. So
exactly.
God, I love
it's a good time to be alive. Yeah, they keep making them. They're also they put out a probe droid recently, which I'm really excited for in that scale.
This weird thing happened where I realized that I think probe droids are the coolest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
I went from being like probe droids are kind of cool to like you should get a probe droid tattoo, and I was like, yeah, I should. Like that's one of those things where I'm like I'm not like a huge. There's no backstory, like there's no like probe droid novels. They're just awesome. Like they're the first
seriously
shows up in Empire, and they're just like babbida system. They've got like claws. They're great.
Joe Cartwright on YouTube says, "I'm super excited for the new Mandalorian Beskar Black Series." Yeah, that was a weird one because you and I both got that toy when it first came out, and he really only wore that costume for like an episode or two before he got all of his upgrades, and so. Yeah, it happens so quickly. There he is.
Yeah, so here's the original, which is honestly like it's kind of a weird bait and switch to be like, if I was a kid, like an actual child, not just like a developmentally stunted adult man boy like I am, I would have been pretty cross that they put out this figure and I bought it and I was like, that's what he's going to look like for the whole first season. And then like, I don't know, it was like 4 episodes in, he suddenly has like a new kit and he's just like, gets like better gear.
It's weird. You and I both have that Star Wars action figure book, which is basically it's a visual history of every Star Wars action figure ever made. And there's so much stuff in there that happened for half a second in the movies that they made different versions of. Like when you get to the Darth Vader section, it's 11 pages long. And one of them is just sort of there's a reflection of fire on him once, and they're like, make a toy out of it.
One of the ones I had was like my go-to Vader, but it was based on when he shows up in the cave. And so it was it looks like a regular Vader unless you hold it up to light and you realize it's not actually black plastic. It's made of very dark, navy blue translucent plastic, and you can kind of see through it. And then if you hit his head even slightly, it just falls off. And then if you pick at it with your fingernail, it pops off, and half of Mark Hamill's face is underneath.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really cool, but it's also one of those very specific. It's this is not even Vader. This is a vision that shows up in one scene.
Yeah. I want to move on to something real quick because Anthony LaMonica says Lola Bunny is sexy. And you know what? He's right. And I think we should celebrate Lola Bunny. So we're going to talk about Space Jam. I would say one of the probably top 2 or 3 greatest movies ever made. I think it was Roger Ebert said it was the most impressive cinematic classic, the most genre defining movie of all time.
So let's back this up. Yeah. I'm fully with you in just really hyping it up, but I also just want to celebrate the fact that this is one of those movies that should not exist, and it should not have been successful, and it should not have a sequel. But lo and behold, it is getting a sequel. LeBron James, via a new hat, tweeted out that he showed off the logo for it. Space Jam 2 is actually going to be called Space Jam: A New Legacy. We have the graphic up here. There's a nice graphics comparison to be here's what the first one looked like, and here's the new one. That's a great logo. That is
which one?
The new one. I mean, they're both great.
I really like them both. Obviously, the original. I mean, it has the benefit of us staring at it for 30 years or whatever. But this one sort of looks like it says Space Jum.
Yeah, I'm kind of okay with that. Space Jam is fine. Can we just talk about that the term Space Jam doesn't tell you what the F word movie is about at all?
No, it doesn't.
It's totally one of those things that that was a wonderful era before, search engine optimization and having immediately looping people into what you're trying to do. I also love that they're a new legacy, which is totally trying to Force Awakens it, as opposed to be Space Jam 2, which is I guess they're scared they're going to scare off people who didn't see the first one and they're not going to know what's going on. But what is the legacy of Space Jam?
I'm totally with you on that. I really hope they don't do anything spend a third of the movie doing callback jokes to the original. I hope the pitch is that every 30 years, Monstars, who are aliens from space, show up to haunt the NBA. And that's it. And it's just, they know about it. It's a known quantity at this point. This has been a really interesting 24 hours because we got this logo and people immediately started comparing the old logo to the original, but they also use this as an opportunity to compare LeBron James's entire NBA legacy to Michael Jordan's entire NBA legacy, which is coinciding with his ESPN show that's airing right now, The Last Dance, which is phenomenal and everyone should watch it. And so everyone's sort of talking about the legacy of Michael Jordan as a basketball player and then the legacy of LeBron James as a basketball player. But the Monstars don't care about that because they're drawings and they're just here to torment.
Let's back this up for a second. The clip we were just showing, I didn't know this until I did some research of how the hell did Space Jam get made? I remember growing up where adults would be that's just a commercial. They're just trying to sell things to kids. Space Jam was 100% based on a commercial. Space Jam was based on a Super Bowl commercial for Nike in which Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan played basketball together. And there was here's the first one, which was from 1992. And he just came out of the ground and there were these other ball players who were being mean to Bugs Bunny, and then he summoned Michael Jordan like a deity or something, and they played basketball together. And then there was another one where Marvin the Martian showed up, and it's just it was one of those. Also at the time, nobody gave a crap about Looney Tunes. They weren't cool, and then this made them cool again. And Warner Brothers was yeah, we like what we're doing with the with these like 70-year-old like characters who we use to like make fun of Hitler too. Like, good job. You're killing it. You're making them relevant. And
Yeah.
like Space Jam, like I was like into Looney Tunes kind of as a kid and like not into sports at all. And I remember just being like super stoked on Space Jam. Like I was really excited about it because it was just fun as hell. And it in hindsight as an adult being like, I don't know how it got made. I don't know how it also the director of it had done one other movie. He'd done like a bunch of commercials and Michael Jackson videos, but he hadn't like what how like if it was the 80s, I'd be like cocaine, obviously.
Right. Yeah, no, it didn't make any sense. And the thing is that like there's a lasting legacy of this movie. I mean, no pun intended for the new title, and I don't know why they would call it a new legacy, but there's a lasting legacy for Space Jam. But I think a lot of people don't remember is that like after this movie came out, there was like Warner Brothers stores in the mall where like thugged out dudes could go and get like a big jacket with Taz on it and walk outside, and no one would question them. Like there was 5 or 10 years before that if you walked outside with a Tasmanian devil jacket or something that had like Foghorn Leghorn on it, people would be like, "Is this man okay in the head?" Mm-hmm. Which is something Foghorn Leghorn would say.
And that kind of went full circle, and then like the hyphy movement sort of like hijacked it again.
Yep.
I remember being in like 5th grade where it's like the very beginning of like you're starting to understand what's actually cool and like how you can fit in, and at the same time I was like, I will be more popular at school if I have this Marvin the Martian assignment notebook. Because Marvin the Martian was like, he was cool because he looked like a centurion. And
K-Babs on YouTube says those Porky Pig spare tire covers were everywhere. I totally forgot about those. Yeah, they were all over the place. And Jeff Cowman says Warner Brothers stores were huge back then. They were trying hard to compete with Disney. Yeah, I remember going to the mall in the 90s and there was like the Disney store and the Warner Brothers store. But you're totally right in that like people weren't really like checking for Looney Tunes at the time. There was a couple attempts at like reboots and revamps. And obviously you and I had Tiny Toons. But there was like 20, 30 years where like it just felt like you watched reruns or like sort of like weird attempts at bringing the show back.
I mean, looking at the sort of the relevance of Space Jam right now, like obviously everyone's going up against Disney. Disney is killing it right now, but in the 90s they weren't doing quite as hot as they are now. And like the WB was launching in the 90s. Like Warner Brothers was like they had on they were on top of stuff. Like Batman movies did pretty well. I'm trying to think what else they had going on for them, but like they didn't have, theme parks per se, but they did clearly okay with Looney Tunes because that became sort of this zeitgeist thing going on. But I'm wondering if this is like, can we just be real here? Like, Space Jam is the Warner Brothers version of Kingdom Hearts.
I must just put my middle fingers up to you. How dare you?
I'm gonna say that because it's like you get something that is like it is a giant, like deep blue ocean of content to explore. In one case with Kingdom Hearts, it's like anime and JRPGs, but it's paired with this like accessible, familiar thing, which is like, Disney characters. Whereas sports, on the other hand, is like you can get your first exposure to what basketball is through Space Jam and the familiar faces of the Tunes characters. Like it's this pairing of like these sort of archetypal, familiar, ancient, septuagenarian cartoon characters from America with these, international, global concepts such as, basketball or role-playing games.
And so to kind of add to that, and I don't know how much validity there is to this, but there was that rumor kicking around a couple weeks ago that I remember, Max, you and I back in the before when we were allowed to see each other in person, went for like a coffee walk. And I was telling you about that whole thing about the rumor around the new Space Jam movie is that essentially it won't just pull in from the Looney Tunes universe. It will pull from all Warner Brothers properties. And obviously we don't have a trailer yet. We have a logo, which means we're getting closer and closer. But all the Warner Brothers properties means like Lego. It means Harry Potter. It means Batman. Like there's decades and decades and decades of stuff to pull from there that I don't know how they would do that. If there's like a portal that opens and all of a sudden it's just like everyone's animated.
I would like that so much better than Ready Player One, where if it was just like LeBron James is like, oh no, the Monstars are back. Batman, Harry Potter, the Back to the Future DeLorean. We need your help. And they get them all together. They have to play basketball. I just want to see Batman play basketball with Bugs Bunny and LeBron James. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, right? Like, I don't know.
Terrible, but it sounds amazing. Also, like, I have no tolerance for people who have like any negativity towards this film. Get out of here. We got bigger things to worry about. Who cares if they're making a new Space Jam movie?
No, seriously. Like, everything sucks right now. If you want to fight between who is the better athlete, LeBron James or Michael Jordan, have at it. Do that for the rest of your lives. And when this movie comes out, you can judge their athleticism based on those two films side by side. That's perfectly legal. But to say that we don't need this movie, how dare you? Get out. Go outside.
What's going to be really weird if it's not even about basketball, if it's just like a weird, like it's just like an existential journey where like LeBron's like, hey, okay, let's go on to the next thing. I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life. And like Bugs Bunny's like, I too am trying to figure out how to like make my relevant right now. And it just like, it's not going to be that. They're going to play basketball, but like, it doesn't actually, like a Space Jam could be anything.
Right. It technically could be anything.
Doesn't have to be with Monstars. It's really there. It's the possibilities are limitless.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this movie eventually. I hope they take their time with it. I'm like really excited at the idea of just like a bunch of like weird 2D animated like characters hanging out with basketball players. Like, I don't know, we don't see that enough. That we got Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Space Jam and Cool World and a bunch of movies like that for a while, and I was like, this is going to be normal. We're going to get movies like this all the time, and then we really didn't. And so I'm all for it. Joe Cartwright says, do you think Charles Barkley will make an appearance in the sequel? He better. He has to.
God, I hope so.
You need Charles Barkley. You need Shaq, too. Get all those guys in there. Before we leave you for the week, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I noticed a lot of people in the chat asking if they missed Solid Snake. Yes, you did. He was in the first half of the show.
Yep, but I can also say like that full interview is going up on IGN. That'll be going 7 p.m. sharp. Just by itself. So if you want to see what Solid Snake has to say about the future of VR missions and sneaking and the X-Men and all those good things, it'll be there for you. Yeah, just got to give it an hour. And yeah, shout out to David Hayter for doing this show again. He did Up at Noon way back in the day, which we reminisced about when he was on the other day and we interviewed him. And we all got very drunk drinking something called Powers Whiskey. So if you can hunt that down in this weird world, go for it, because it's a bad afternoon. Before we go, we wrote a little special something with David that I think is like, I don't know, probably one of our favorite things we ever got to do. This is one of those things where like it hasn't hit me yet. Like this is such a absolute goddamn dream come true to be on a codec call with Solid Snake, but we did it. We made a little PSA about, let's take a look. Yeah. So let's watch this, and we'll see you guys soon.
Snake, do you copy? What's your status?
Colonel, an invisible threat has rapidly taken the world by storm. Ordinary routine has been disrupted, and lives hang in the balance. I'm talking about COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus.
The coronavirus?
It's the worst thing since Fox Die. Luckily, it's not unstoppable, and plans are already in place to halt its spread. First, be sure to wash your hands. Proper procedure with soap and warm water for at least 20 seconds will kill this thing. Second, stay in your quarters as much as possible. Isolation takes a toll on morale, so keep yourself entertained with books, games, and movies. Better yet, make contact with an old friend on a secure codec frequency. Third, if you have to go on a field mission, be smart about it. Equip your PPE first.
PPE?
Personal protective equipment. A face mask, gloves, goggles. But it's just as important that you remember your training. Whenever possible, keep at least 2 meters away from anyone you encounter. This is no time for CQC. I would also recommend bringing a cardboard box for social distancing. Finally, save your rations for later and support your local businesses. They're hurting. Order a pizza and eat the whole thing alone. Buy 2 burritos. Nobody can see you eat when you eat alone.
Stay safe, Snake. Complete your mission until it's a success. Over and out.
Thank you, Colonel. Stay safe. Stay stealthy. Snake out.